Wow, what a game, Jim!
Hey, what's up? Sementine here, taking a look at the turn-based strategy game Blood Bowl 2, developed by Cyanide Studios, the same guys behind Styx Master of Shadows and Arclash Legacy. Blood Bowl 2 has you managing and playing as your very own Blood Bowl team, Blood Bowl being like Gridiron or American football, but just a little bit rougher and set in the Warhammer universe. The game plays player by player for one team and then switching over to the other. Everything you do in Blood Bowl is tied to a dice roll, whether you're blocking an opponent, performing a throw, or even just trying to pick up the ball, which for some teams can actually be surprisingly hard to do. Most teams are made up of 3 different types of players with their own specific uses. You have your front line that are your strongest players, aimed at preventing any of the opposition players from breaking through to your ball carrier while attacking, or to break through your enemy's front line to get to their ball carrier while defending. Blitzers that are aimed towards supporting other players due to their high mobility, and finally backline players that are great at using the ball and scoring but are extremely fragile and need to be protected. For most of the game, you'll be attempting blocks on opponents, an aggressive action that can have 5 different results. On the low end, you can push an opponent backwards, selecting one of the 3 possible locations for them to end up, which is important when trying to clear a pathway for your ball carrier to get through unscathed. Then you have the 2 different successful tackles where your opponent will be downed. These 2 tackles work very much the same, however there are player traits that can dodge the push tackle. Finally, there are the failed tackles, the sides of the die you never really want to get. For both down, your tackle will be successful against your opponent, however in the process of the tackle you will also be downed. The worst result you can get though is attacker down. Your tackle will fail on the opponent and instead they will knock you down. Failing a block will result in a turnover, so it's best to leave your 1 die blocks till last and get all your movement and double die blocks out of the way first. Having one of your players knocked down is bad for multiple reasons, the worst being that you have to roll on that player's armor value to see if they receive an injury. If you fail, the best outcome is to be stunned. The player will remain on the field but be unable to make an action for 1 turn. Being knocked out, the player will be removed from the field but can make it back after a touchdown or halftime if they roll successfully on a 50% chance roll. Getting an actual injury starts off by having a player missing a game, but can have players' stats decrease or be out for multiple games. And of course, then there is the absolute failure state where the player can actually die, which can be devastating if you have leveled up the player multiple times. You can purchase an apothecary outside of the game that basically acts as a reroll on any injury a player may receive. You can only ever have one of these, so it's best to have it for the major stuff like deaths or stat decreases. If there are no injuries, knockouts or deaths, then you just have the downside of the player having to spend some of its movement getting back up, while it also counts as an action, so you won't be able to block with that player unless of course you blitz for a second action. Each turn you will only be able to blitz one player, allowing them to move and block rather than just one or the other. Removing a player from play on your opponent's side is a massive advantage, especially if they have no players in reserve, as now you have a numbers advantage. While you can perform blocks in the hope of knocking out a player or injuring them, you can also push them off the field and into the crowd to remove them from play. This also has the same chance of injury as being knocked down. Every player on the field has stats in 4 different categories that will help or hinder them in certain actions. These 4 categories consist of movement action, representing how many tiles on the field you are able to move in 1 turn. Strength, the number used in any blocks a player is involved in. Agility, used for dodging out of enemy player tackle zones, and finally armor value, that is used to determine if a player is injured when knocked down. It is possible to increase these stats during a level up, however you will need to roll extremely high. To level up a player, they must gain star player points by performing certain actions during a game, including touchdowns, knockouts, injuring a player, or performing skill-based actions like passes. Once they reach the level up requirement, you roll 2 die to determine whether or not they get an additional skill or statistic. Most of the time, you will only be able to unlock another skill for your player in their specializations, like strength, agility, and passing. Skills are an extremely important part of the game and can give your players significant bonuses like a reroll on a failed dodge roll, or if you roll a both down during a block, you can get a skill that negates the knockdown effect on your player. Reading through all of these skills and picking the right one is extremely important, as players don't level up that fast, especially some of the more specialized players that require up to 5 times the star player points as normal players to level up. Being a sequel, let's take a look at what's new in the game. A campaign mode has been introduced that will have you leading the human Reichland Reavers team from the ground up to potential champions. The mode starts off as a tutorial to the game, so any newcomers may want to start there, as jumping straight into the multiplayer game may be a little overwhelming if you don't understand the mechanics fully. Later on though, the mode will start adding scripted events that are only available in the campaign mode, like the referee taking out players because he has a grudge against your team, or one of the commentators joining your team for a game. The commentators also play a bigger part in Blood Bowl 2, delivering most of your team's backstory and sideline drama between and during games in a comedic fashion that some will love, but others may find a little bit corny. Stadium customization is now a thing, with 5 unique stadiums that can obtain up to 10 possible add-ons and will be used when playing at your home stadium. A player marketplace has been added for online play where you can sell and buy players to create better teams, however this feature doesn't seem to be fully implemented yet. Lastly, there is the Cabal Vision or replay feature that saves replays of your games that you can go back to and watch if you ever want to, or you can also watch current top tier games live. Online play is definitely where Blood Bowl 2 excels, however it's not your typical matchmaking system. You will have to register your team as part of a league, and then register that team as part of a competition within that league. Open ladders act as your main play anytime matchmaking queues, but it's the actual tournament structured competitions that will have you playing simulated rounds each week against smaller groups of players. Unfortunately, you do have to go looking for these types of competitions, and it's not easy to find one that is currently taking new teams, something that could be improved by showcasing new competitions on the league front page. The official Blood Bowl League also seems to be the only league that offers scions after every game, the in-game currency. Currently there is no use for the scions, but customizable items for your team are planned to be purchasable with these later this year, as well as being obtainable as rare random drops after a game. Due to the aggressive nature of the game, I do feel that some of the physically stronger teams like the Orcs or Chaos have somewhat of an advantage in getting players leveled up and just winning games by eliminating as many of the opponent's players as possible. The more fragile skill-based teams like the High Elves and Dark Elves can perform some really great plays, but there will almost always be a bunch of injuries during the game that will eventually cripple the team in the long run. Playing one of these more fragile skill-based teams will require a lot of strategy and luck to be successful. It's extremely obvious as well when you take a look at the top teams in any of the ladders, usually consisting of Chaos, Dwarven and Lizardmen teams in the top rankings. Unfortunately, due to this, players will concede games if they are up against certain races so as not to lose any of their important players. Doing this though does have some negatives, including that you don't earn any star player points for your players to be able to level up, while the game still counts towards your players aging, which will eventually lead them to gaining age injuries and eventually retiring. Outside of the main game, you can purchase staff members for your team for added benefits, rerolls being arguably the most important, allowing you to reroll a failed roll or block. The Apothecary is on equal footing when it comes to importance, especially later on when you have skilled players, as it allows you to reroll injuries and death. You're only allowed to have one of these, so use it wisely. The next few staff members will help you on random kickoff events, increasing your chances at good events for you through cheerleaders, assistant coaches, and team fans. Right before you go into a match, you'll also be given the opportunity to buy other bonuses, like another Apothecary if you're playing against a strong team, a star player if you have the spare cash to purchase one for the game, and a wizard spell which out of all of the available purchasable bonuses can be extremely powerful, able to knock down large groups of players in one shot, leaving many injured if a 50% chance roll is successful. The wizard spell, more specifically the fireball spell, is the only bonus that probably shouldn't be in the game due to how powerful it is. However, it is quite expensive to purchase and it does only work half of the time. Other features of the game include a bunch of statistics regarding your overall performance, as well as team-specific statistics, so you can find out where your team is lacking and try to improve on it via skill selection on player level ups or just changing your playstyle. I would like to see player-specific statistics as well though, to keep track of certain players' careers. If you want to play some friendly matches either against your friends online or locally, you can. For online play, you will have to have the person on your Steam's friend list. Altogether, Blood Bowl 2 brings fantasy and football together quite nicely, having you sitting on the edge of your seat for every block and roll. You can become incredibly invested in your players and team with each match adding to their own unique narrative, and if they get injured or die, it can be devastating. The almost complete randomness of the game may not be to everyone's liking, but the randomness can create amazing moments in the game. To get the most out of the game, you will have to go looking for a good, consistent league that runs competitions in your time zone, or get together with a bunch of friends and create your own league competitions. If you enjoy turn-based strategy and the competitive nature of American football, or any sports in general, then Blood Bowl 2 is definitely worth a look. If you're sitting on the fence, maybe wait for the patch due for the end of this year, as some more features will be added to the game that may sway you on whether or not to get it. Anyway, that's been my player preview for Blood Bowl 2. The game officially released on the 22nd of September on PC, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and is available on Steam for $45 or your regional equivalent. If you want to find out more about the game, check out the links below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.